Welcome to The Lock Shop with Nielsen and Hustler, powered by Coolbet Canada.
Hey, what is up, Lock Shoppers? Welcome to today's show. Huss in with you along with JBM, Jake Bolin Moss from Coolbet. We got a lot to get to today. Dusty's going to be, I think he's still going to be doing morning shows as much as possible, but he's going to be gone for the next little while. Doing a very busy guy, doing the WHL Championship Series on TSN, which is awesome for the big guy. We'll pay attention to that series, I believe, beginning tomorrow. But in the meantime, I will hold it down with Pat, with Jake. We'll get Iwanek in here, I'm sure, at some point next week. And we have a lot to talk about. Jake's with us. Jake, now, big news in your parts of the world today is Sheldon Keefe getting whacked. We will talk about that a little later on because right off the bat, we have to get this. And listen, to everybody in chat, give me let's go with a quick morale check. How's everybody feeling here? Because that was an absolutely stunning comeback by the Vancouver Canucks last night. And honestly, Jake, just we'll get to the minutia of both games last night. I will say this. The last two nights of playoff hockey, four of the best game. Now, again, the Bruins and Panthers game was interesting maybe for other reasons. But two of the best nights of playoff hockey, doubleheaders, I can remember in such a long time. I mean, starting it off with probably the best game of the playoffs, Rangers and Hurricanes 2 nights ago, into the OT comeback by the Avs. Tons of bad blood between the Bruins and Panthers last night, and then a game that I'm sure people in Edmonton and Vancouver are still trying to wrap their head around last night. It doesn't get much better than what we've seen the last couple nights.
No, I mean, the first round, you get a ton more games, but this second round is when the action starts to get crazy. So we've seen that happen over the last couple nights. It's exciting stuff. It's must-watch TV right now. This is why this is what playoff hockey is all about. And, you know, the comebacks and, you know, the drama. Last night, the Pasternak fight with the Chuck, which I'm sure we'll talk about, like, just unbelievable stuff. And every night it seems to be something new in terms of storylines.
It was something else. I mean, listen, I think everyone in Edmonton and, certainly here in Winnipeg, I mean, the entire hockey world is still buzzing about the comeback last night in Vancouver. And, I'm interested to hear what people have to say in the chat, particularly ones that are Oiler fans in Edmonton, about how all that went down. I'm going to give Vancouver a ton of credit. Like, even in the first period when they were down and they let a couple of goals in, there were some periods where they were, 1.5 minutes of just sustained offensive zone time with some pretty good chances that just didn't go in. And, the Oilers got up on that lead. And from that point on, it was all Vancouver. The word that comes to mind is relentless with the way that they played last night. And, listen, it's still stunning to see a third period go the way that it did. But, listen, the Oilers can be a hell of a lot better. That was nowhere close to their A game. But, credit where credit is due. That wasn't just a complete choke job by the Edmonton Oilers. That was Rick Tocchet and his team willing themselves back in, showing absolutely not an ounce of quit last night. And we got a series coming up. For all the folks, and I'd said this all week long, for anyone that thinks that this is just going to be the Oilers rolling over Vancouver, I don't think so. And Vancouver made a huge statement last night.
Yeah, listen, full disclosure, I didn't stay up for the entire game. I would be an absolute mess if I had. I went to bed at 4-1. I had an Oilers Panthers money line parlay. I was like, we're coming out on top. I wake up this morning, it's 5-4 Vancouver, and not even an OT finish either. To have it finished in regulation, and I was pretty shocked myself. So I don't want to say I feel for Oilers fans because my parlay to their passion for their team is a little bit different, but I was definitely on their side last night, and it didn't pan out for either of us. So
it was, I'm just looking at the shots on goal in the game. And the Oilers had 4 shots in the second period and 4 shots in the third period and went like 20 minutes without getting one on the board. And I look at Vancouver in the first period with 5 shots on net. But they still, I mean, I thought the Oilers did a good job of getting in lanes and blocking shots and, kind of taking away as much as they could. But they had a tough time getting it out of their own zone. I'll be honest. I mean, later on in that game, it was giving me flashbacks to the Jets Avalanche series where, one team was just all over the other one. I know Tommy Gazzola and the crew on the EST post game last night had plenty to talk about, and thousands of people coming in. I see those numbers on the YouTube channel just spiking, as we go throughout the day. Because I think there's a lot of people that are looking at kind of reaction on both sides to a game. Now, the funny thing about this is that's just a home game for Vancouver. You're holding serve in game 1 of a 7-game series, which is a long one. And as we all know, things can change really quickly. But I think that if the Oilers rolled them in that game and the Vancouver didn't come back, and you've got Edmonton just popping in, grabbing game 1 and grabbing home ice, we probably had a better chance of a shorter series. But I mean, right now, for those of us that took the over 5.5 games, the over 6.5 games, I really do think we are looking for a long series that's going to be back and forth. If game 1 is any indication.
Well, listen, the series is set up. It's still set up fine for Edmonton. I mean, you lost the first game on the road. That's not a big deal. Yeah, you were favored in the game. Doesn't matter. If you come away with a split, that's a win, right? Like we always talk about that, right? Like you look at it from a grand scheme of things. You come away 1-1 in a series, going back home for game 3. Like you're not going to be upset about that. So if you're the Edmonton Oilers, if you're an Oilers fan, like. Let's not freak out about one collapse. Collapses happen. Trust me, I've been a part of several. Just got to win the next one. That's all that matters at this point. Just win the next one. Still minus 141 to win the series, by the way. I checked this morning. So it's not like all of a sudden the whole script has been flipped and Vancouver is taking control of the series. You're up 4-1 in the game. Yeah, it didn't work out in the end, but you can absolutely go in and crush Vancouver next game, and I'm sure the nasty chat will look a lot different if that's the case.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up because, looking at Coolbet right now at the series prices, as you mentioned, the Oilers now minus 141, the Vancouver Canucks plus 120. Pre game 1, the Canucks were as high as plus 220. It settled at, I believe, plus 210 right before yesterday, and again, opened up at plus 200. So a lot of Edmonton money came in. I will say this, as you mentioned it, the Oilers still haven't lost on home ice. They've got an opportunity still to come back with the split. If you are still if you're not fazed by last night's game, now's a much better time to get in on the Oilers at more than half the price that you would have had to pay before game 1, knowing that this is still a long series. Vancouver's got 1 win. They still need 3 more. And Edmonton still has Connor McDavid, who I imagine is going to be a beast in game 2, far more impactful than he was in the first tilt.
Yeah, and how about my guy Zach Hyman? I tweeted it yesterday. I said, you see that number plus money over 3.5 for 4 goals in the series, already potted 2. So I mean, 2 goals in the next. This is likely, like you said, Huss. At this point, it's going to go 6 or 7. I mean, 2 goals over the next 5 or 6 games. I think you're sitting in a great spot if you jumped on the Hyman goal total. I'm just trying to find it here. That's the point total. I don't know if these are supposed to be up, to be honest. They might need to come down. But anyways, yeah, no, it's an interesting series to start, especially with how Edmonton controlled the game and the comeback from the Canucks. I think we're in for an interesting series, like you said, a long one as well.
Now this Florida Boston game, I don't think we should be surprised that Florida had a massive pushback. I don't think we should be surprised that Boston maybe was dragging a little bit after the emotional, win in game 1, following game 7, Carlo having the kid. But I'll tell you what, both of these teams mean business. And that third period got nasty. It got a little out of hand. And, you could see everybody on the ice fighting when they, it's a line brawl, not a line brawl, but everyone getting into it. I saw Trent Frederick sort of trying to stir things up. But I did not have David Pastrnak telling his coach that he was going to answer Matthew Tkachuk's challenge for a fight, come off the bench, and throw down against the rat of the Florida Panthers. People know on this show, I can't stand the Bruins. I liked them more after last night. Well, at least what Pasta did. What did you think when you saw that happening? I mean, my jaw was on the floor.
Well, pretty crazy. Like it looked like it was going to get chippy. Kind of the more Florida scored, the chippier it was going to get. And then all of a sudden, Tkachuk and Pasta are having a conversation. Well, it looks like they were both over, talking to the refs. And Tkachuk had said something to Pasta. Pasta says something back. They kind of talk all the way to the benches. Even they're leaning over the benches. They're having a chatter. And Tkachuk's like, okay, you want to go? Like, you want to go? And we saw what happened. I don't know if you remember from the Toronto series. Nyes did kind of the same thing with Pasta in a little bit of a scrum. He said, go me then, because you take that trade-off every day. I don't necessarily know if you're Florida, in that late in the game with the score being the way it was, probably not a huge deal. But they go to the bench. Pasta looks at Montgomery. He says, hey, like, I'm going to go him. And then Montgomery says, okay, you want to go? Go ahead. Jumps back on the ice. The minute they came on the ice, that's what was happening. They both threw their gloves on the ice. There was a clear indication it was going to be a fight. Now, listen, the fight itself wasn't great. Pasta clearly wasn't happy. He got taken to the ice, and he tried to get a few late shots in. I think both players came out unscathed. But
you just got muted.
Out again.
There you go. You just got muted there. Well, listen, let me say this.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, you're back. Let me say this about David Pastrnak showing that. That is some stones that we don't see a lot in many, many stars in the National Hockey League. And for him, a guy that is an elite goal scorer, their most dangerous offensive player, in a game that's lost, to go out and make a sacrifice, knowing that he might take a few, knowing that he might eat a few. That's got to be incredibly inspiring for the rest of the guys on that team. Like, I will say this. There's some things I don't like about the Bruins and haven't. I will say this. What David Pastrnak did last night by stepping up and standing up to Matthew Tkachuk, who, of course, is not looking to fight with any legitimate tough guys. He's looking to try to go at skill players, and that's something that Tkachuk does. I think that when the Boston Bruins jump on the ice at home for Game 3, he is going to be welcomed as a hero, and that the temperature of this series cranked up multiple levels last night. By the way, both Florida and Boston handled the third period, but especially their star player going up against a guy like Matthew Tkachuk.
Yeah, listen, it's a similar situation I talked about with Edmonton. You're Boston, you might have got smoked in Game 2, but at the end of the day, it's 1-1 in the series. You're going back home at the Garden. At very least, you get a split at the Garden, and you're back to Florida in a 2-2 series. So you're still in control if you're Boston. I think, you talked about Florida probably taking care of business. We saw that first game not meaning necessarily what we were going to see the rest of the series. But I wouldn't be shocked if this series goes 6, if not 7 either. I think both these teams are strong. Swayman, it wasn't his night, but he's not the type of guy to back down from a challenge. I'm sure he'll be back in there. What would you do, Huss? Because they've been going back and forth all season. I know Swayman had the great series against Toronto. Would you consider going to Allmark for Game 3, or you just keep riding your guy? And because they're a little different. I know some teams.
Yeah.
And we're going to get to the Carolina series. Kochetkov starting tonight, Game 3. But, interesting to hear your thoughts on if you go Allmark or Swayman here in Game.
My natural thought is you just go back to Swayman. He had a .955. He was the difference maker in the Leaf series. If he doesn't play the way he did, they're probably not playing right now. But to your point, this is a team that has literally gone back and forth between two guys. Allmark won the Vezina last year. I still think Swayman is their number one. But coming back, I think I might go back to him, knowing that you can go to Allmark in game 4 if need be. Like, I guess it makes sense to get a guy and ride him and get him hot. I mean, that's normally what we see. But they do have a different level of options than just about every other team in the playoffs, despite what you mentioned with Carolina. All I know is that this is going to be wild to see what happens. I mean, that first period puck drop, the intensity in the Garden for game number 3 between the Panthers and Bruins is going to be something else. Oilers right now, we'll finish up with these games because we're going to get to what's happening tonight. Oilers are still a big favorite in game 2, minus 130. Canucks plus 111. That's even bigger. Canucks were plus 109, and the Oilers were minus 128 last night in the game. And if you do think the Oilers are going to win that game or the series, I mean, the minus 141 price is not something I think many people thought was going to be available. And I'll say this on the Vancouver side. I mean, I think there's a lot of people that were giving Vancouver a chance, but maybe, wanted to see how things played out. The fact that you can still get the Canucks at plus money after a win like that, I think there's pros and cons of both sides right now. I mean, if you're Vancouver, obviously you wish you jumped on the plus 220 earlier, but still being able to get plus money after a win like that. And here's the thing, goaltending, and I see everyone's talking about Stuart Skinner in the chat. That is an issue. Shilov's wasn't very good last night either, at least at the start, and then made a few saves later on. But I mean, that was sort of on the Oilers. I think part of the reason why I was still, as much as I respect Vancouver and what they did last night, like Edmonton's chances to come back, is what are the chances of them putting up 8 shots over 40 minutes again? I mean, that just doesn't seem possible with the firepower that Edmonton's putting out. Obviously, we'll wait to see what the story with Draisaitl is. Apparently, with some cramping, hopefully he'll be back and give the Oilers the full complement right now. But that's a devastating loss that can really help one team, and depending on how the other team reacts to it, we'll see what happens going into game 3. Game 2, I should say. All I know is legendary comeback by the Canucks. I understand that people in Edmonton that are listening right now on EST probably a little rattled last night, but as you mentioned, Jake, this has happened before. Much better it happens in game 1 than in game 5 or game 6 or game 7, and the Oilers have a lot of time to get back into it. Let's get to tonight's games. Hurricanes and Rangers. And you just mentioned they are making the goalie switch. Rod the Bod going with Kochetkov.
Yeah, listen, Huss, like this could be a substantial move by Rod because, there's a lot of talk about his contract right now in terms of renewal, what that's going to look like in Carolina. And this is the type of move that if you go to this goalie and he's not the answer and they lose game 3, they're down 3-0, he's staring down the barrel of another sweep, in an early round and another, what Carolina fans would likely call a failed season. So it's a bold move. I respect it from Rod. I think I love his coaching style. I know my roommate has him top of the list to come to Toronto. I know we're going to touch on that at some point as well. But it's going to be an interesting scenario. And speaking of, I mean, you look at the Rangers, the way they've been playing. I know last game went to overtime, obviously, but they've been pretty legit. I know the power play has been really great. That's helped them a lot. But I've loved the Rangers. I've got some friends who are Rangers fans. They've gotten me on board. Plus 140 tonight is not a number I'm going to shy away from. I don't hate that, especially with the cold Kochetkov coming in. He could be the savior. He could very much be the problem as well. We haven't seen him play in a little while here. So
if he's not, they're down 3-0. And here's what I'll say about Carolina. I mean, listen, they've had great success in the first 2 rounds. And listen, winning 2 rounds in the playoffs is not easy. Get into the final 4 of the Stanley Cup playoffs. I mean, it's really, really tough. But they have had a very bad, I think they're 0-12 in the conference final. So, I mean, they're going up against good teams, falling behind early, and just not being able to get back into it. I guess there is the possibility that, the Rangers get this one and then, just go for the jugular. I still have to think that Carolina gets back into this series. And we talked about it going in. They were the co-favorite with the Oilers to win the cup. Like the addition of Kuznetsov, but particularly Gensel, sort of vaulted them ahead of the likes of Florida and the Rangers, despite the fact that the Rangers had home ice in this series, which is still important to remember that the Hurricanes have not lost on home ice. And that's why this game tonight is, in a lot of ways, do or die for the Hurricanes.
This has got to be as close to a must-win, right? For Carolina, like you're not staring down the barrel of 3-0. Like this is like if you're a believer in must-win hockey games, this is as close as it gets right here. I don't know if you want to take the juice on -165, but if you think Hurricanes, got to have it tonight, it might be worth it. It might be worth it.
Even money on the Canes in regulation, if you like that. And the puck line +161 for the Canes to win by one. A lot of times in playoff games, you can make an argument that, for the money, you're almost better off laying the puck line because if a team's going to win in regulation, unless they're scoring with 10 seconds left in the game, there's almost inevitably the empty net, and it's going one way or the other. The team's going to score and tie it up, or you're going to pop an empty netter and win by 2. Those are the options, though, for the game. And as far as the series goes right now, and again, keep in mind, Carolina has not lost at home. If you do like the Canes to get back into this series, hold serve, make it a best of 3, and potentially win it, they were like -150 to start the series, +235. The fact that number actually isn't higher, being down 2-0, also obviously speaks to where these next 2 games are being played. But also, I think the faith that the book had in the Carolina Hurricanes coming into this series. So that's kind of how it's shaking up tonight. I like Carolina. Listen, I'm a big fan of the Canes, although I've been so impressed with the Rangers have been playing. They've been better than I expected, and they're finding a ways to win. And the big difference right now certainly was in game 2 was Shesterkin. I thought Carolina was the better team in that game, but guess what? The goalies get paid too. He happens to get paid a lot, and he earned his paycheck on that night. And then we get to the late one tonight. The Avalanche and the Dallas Stars. How do you think Dallas is handling this? I mean, they lost the first 2 games at home against Vegas and came back to 1. So they've still got the confidence that they can do it. But it's the way that they lost game number 3, the way that they lost game 1, blowing the 3-0 lead, that I think gives you some pause as to what that means for the rest of the series.
I'll tell you how Dallas is feeling. They're pissed off about the draw they pulled for this playoffs. I mean, you start off the playoffs, you got to face the former Stanley Cup champions, got to go 7 games with them, basically at full health. We saw Mark Stone come back for game 1. And then guess what your reward is for winning game 7? You get to play Nathan McKinnon, Cale Makar, and the Stanley Cup champions from a couple years ago. So, they're not thrilled about their draw. I'm big on Dallas. I like them. I like them a lot. I think they have a great mix between a good veteran core and then a young core as well. Wyatt Johnson has really made a name for himself here in the playoffs, and I think this is a team that can get off the mat. We saw what happened, in their first series. They went down 0-2, didn't falter, won the next 3, and then obviously pushed to 7, and they found a way to win that one. I don't think they want to go down 0-2 at home. To have to go on the road, once again, down 0-2 at home, to have to go on the road to Colorado. So I think tonight they're going to have a sense of urgency, and I think they can find a way to get it done. And better number than the Carolina number, right? -129 tonight at home for the Dallas Stars in the money line. I don't mind that at all.
Yeah, and listen, if you do like Dallas and you still like them in this series, +160. Which in a series that could be 1-1 heading to Colorado afterwards, jump on it. The Avs now -189 favorites for the series, which considering they were +104 going in before they dropped the puck on game 1 tells you what a significant game that one is. You can still bet the final game of the series in this one. Essentially, will it be it was plus 190 on game 6, plus 190 on game 7, plus 290 on game 5. I think we all expect sort of, the total, if you want to just go over 5.5, it's minus 213. And again, for the game to go 7, for the series to go 7, plus 190. But you're right. There has to be, and I assume there will be, a major sense of urgency with the Stars tonight, because the way the Avalanche are playing and the way that they are rolling, and take it from a Jet fan, we saw the best of them last round and really didn't give the Jets, after a great season, much of a chance. That is not a team you want to give to on home ice and then have them going back to Ball Arena, where they were the best home team in the National Hockey League. So tonight, for the game tonight, Colorado plus 110 and the Dallas Stars minus 129 is the money line. Total in the game is 6.5. And the puck line for the Stars plus 190 for a 2-goal win. Avalanche plus 1.5 is minus 228. Here, listen, I want to get to the NBA for a minute, and then we'll finish up with a little bit of coaching talk right now, because there's lots going on, especially with the Leafs whacking Keefe today. But gang, it is time to for your chance to win some tickets. Well, not just tickets, VIP tickets to the upcoming Great Outdoors Comedy Festival in Edmonton with Shane Gillis and Andrew Schultz. So jealous you guys have Gillis coming to Edmonton. Pick one word, any word. Well, I guess I will pick that word. You know what? Let's go with faith. Faith. You Oiler fans need to keep the faith. Could have gone a different direction on this one, but let's keep it positive in the nasty chat right now. The word is faith, and you need to text that to 780-218-9999 to a chance for VIP tickets to the Friday 12th show at the Great Outdoors Comedy Festival in Edmonton with Shane Gillis and Andrew Schultz. We're entering 4 contestants 4 times a day on the Nielsen Show, the Hangout, the Lock Shop, and 2 Guys or Oil Stream, and of course, Hello Hockey. And Alley Cat, I believe that's the gang that cranks out all that 6 o'clocker lager, is going to be on site and a big part of the Great Outdoors Comedy Festival. So again, faith, 780-218-9999. How good does that show sound? Shane Gillis, outdoors in Edmonton? Sign me up.
I wish I could sign up for this, Huss. I'll be honest with you. I'd love to go see Gillis and Schultz. Actually, I saw Schultz here end of last year. He was great. He swings the comedy a little bit towards where he's doing it, usually the early part of his show, and then obviously he goes into his set. But I think Schultz is great. I think Gillis is great. Those are 2 huge names, and super jealous.
No doubt about it. We have to plan a trip out to Edmonton around that time. We'll see whether we can get a VIP ticket. They are not all gone to EST listeners that are texting in to the EST hotline. Hey, quickly, let's take a quick rip over to the NBA. Knicks. The Knicks. Like what a week at MSG. You mentioned just, you happen to be in Manhattan for a week and have the ability and the cash to get to some of these playoff games. Just been a nut house night after night after night.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's going to all come crashing down when they got to play Boston in the conference final. But I digress. I mean, the Knicks, they're legit, man. They're running into some injury troubles. I think Mitchell Robinson went down. He might be out for the rest of the playoffs. So what's going to happen here is, how many guys can they play? How many guys can they trust? You might see a Bronson playing 48 minutes a night.
Yep.
And it's only sustainable for so long. So you gotta give them a pat on the back. The Knicks have been unreal here in these playoffs. They and then the Rangers, obviously on top of that, like you mentioned, MSG has just been a buzz. But yeah, no, I thought the Pacers might bounce back and steal one on the road, but it looks like they'll have to do some more work tomorrow. When they head back home. Looks like they got the early game tomorrow night. But yeah, no, super impressive what the Knicks have done. I do think even if they move on past this round, it's Boston's final really to lose, but Boston's final to not at least be in. It's Boston's Eastern Conference final to lose. So they've been the cream of the crop of the entire NBA all season, and it's going to be a long road if the Knicks want to get all the way to the championship.
Celtics tonight hosting the Cavs. I mean, the money line's hilarious. Minus 1,000 for Boston, plus 650 for the Cavs. The spread's 13.5. And I think that just speaks to how badly the Celtics beat down the Cavs in game number 1 of that series. The other game tonight, OKC at home against the Dallas Mavericks. Now, I had the OKC for the play of the day on the spread 2 nights ago. They were 3.5-point favorites in game 1. They're 5-point favorites now. And again, I'm no basketball expert, but I will say, if you look at the Mavs playing these series, for instance, against the Clippers, the Mavs more than any team seem to have like big ups and downs from game to game. Like you often see them split on the road and then split at home. And then like they did with the Clippers, take it, with the next couple of games. I really like OKC in this series. Tonight, I am a little nervous that, it's just one of those Luka games where he just goes up and goes off right now. I'm probably going to stay away from this one, but I would not blame anyone if they wanted to throw down on just a straight up money line upset for the Mavs at plus 170 or plus 5.5. Although, man, that OKC team, they're young. They were ready for game number 1, and holy smokes, do they have an atmosphere there in Oklahoma for these games?
Yeah, I'm all on the OKC train at this point. A couple Canadians there in Shea and Lou Dort. I think they're a great young team. I don't know if they're going to have it to go all the way this year, but it's been a great story, especially after a couple of years where they've been bottom of the barrel. They get Chet Holmgren, he sits a year, and now it's really all starting to come together. And it's a great young core, like homegrown. They moved on from so many guys to get first-round picks to get these players. They got Shea from the Clippers. They drafted Holmgren, like I said. Like this team is legit, and I'm rooting for them as well. But I tend to agree with you tonight. I'm a little worried that Luka, Kyrie are going to have a little bit of magic to respond after that game 1 loss. Also, I talked about the Celtics already. I'm very high on them. I think, like I said, it's their Eastern Conference to lose. Plug your nose, take the 13.5. Like they're winning by 20 every single night. Like when they're winning huge. It's not like the Nuggets series with the Lakers where they were just squeaking out wins. Jamal Murray's hitting game winners. They're beating teams and they're beating them by a ton. So you see that number, you're like, whoa, that's a lot for a playoff game. The Celtics crush teams, and Cleveland didn't have the greatest matchup in the first round. You got to remember they played the Orlando Magic and struggled against them. Boston at the Garden, 20+ point victory tonight. Hopefully, I'm right tomorrow. You can pat me on the back.
I'm anti-Boston guy. Just I think in general, and I'm just starting to think about my inherent biases that pretty much all come back to the Patriots dynasty. I think and being pissed off that while they were winning the Super Bowls, they were mixing in NBA titles and a Stanley Cup as well and a freaking World Series. So I've been looking for the opportunity to fade them at any point. It's not going to be against the Caps. We'll see if maybe that New York vibe can create a good series for the Knicks if they can make it that far. But to me, if Boston doesn't win, I'm sort of with you. I think it's going to come out of an elite team in the West that, matches up with them. I thought that was the Denver Nuggets, but the Nugs are now down 2 to Minnesota. And I'll be honest, I said on the Lock Shop after game 2, I am officially in full panic mode on these Nuggets futures. I can't believe I've had to wait 3 days between these games. They're not playing again until tomorrow. They should have played last night. They're going back at it, but the T-Wolves right now, minus 189 for tomorrow's game. Nuggets plus 158. And the series price right now for Denver, who was not a massive favorite, but a big favorite enough, with home court was plus 445. It's plus 445 now after being a favorite. So we've got one game tonight. The 2 games tonight. Boston early. We expect a romp, and then what should be a great one between the Mavs and the OKC Thunder. And again, the line's 13.5 is Boston's laying, and the OKC Thunder 5-point favorites at home. All your odds over there at Coolbet. Again, use the promo code LOCKSHOP if you haven't played a Coolbet before for a 100% bonus up to $200 on your first deposit. All right, we got a few minutes before we go. Big news in Leafland. And listen, if you're not in the playoffs right now, which, I mean, listen, everyone in the Oilers is worried about last night and focusing on game 2. For those of us that have already made tee times, a lot of interest in coaching availability. Winnipeg has their coaching search underway, and there's a new name to be added to that, Sheldon Keefe, who I will say, Jake, I know I saw your video. You were quite happy. Sheldon Keefe with a very classy message to Leafs Nation about his time as the head coach. I will give him credit for the way that he went out.
Yeah, honestly, the video, I was surprised. I thought it was a great way to handle it as well. You know, he said in the video, like, I didn't think a note was going to be enough to, to get all his thoughts out. And I thought he did a great job getting on there, taking a bit of accountability and saying that, he couldn't get it done in the playoffs, and that's ultimately what cost him. It's the nature of the business, Huss. I know it doesn't all fall on the coach, but it is the easiest. It is the easiest one when you can get him out the door, especially when you got contracts like a Mitch Marner and a John Tavares. The no move stuff. Like, it's not as easy to just get those guys out the door. So someone had to fall on the sword. Tree Living said, he loves Sheldon. He thought he was a great guy, but it was time for a new voice. So it's just the nature of the beast. Listen, I know I made the video. I was happy. We were expecting it. We believe Tree Living gave him the option whether to do an exit interview with the press or not. So we expected this was probably going to happen within the next couple of days. Tomorrow, Tree will speak with Shanahan and the new CEO of MLSE. So I'll be tuned into that, see what happens there. And I've seen some odds already roll out. I'm not going to push what book it was, but it looks like Craig Berube is the lead favorite, plus 105 to be the next Leafs head coach. I believe we're going to try to get some stuff out this afternoon if people want to take a sprinkle. I saw someone say Woodcroft in the chat. I would no, thank you. I'm very, very content not to go down that road. But yeah, it sounds like it could be Berube. That's what people in Leafsland, I think, want. So I don't know if that's pushing the odds that direction, but it's interesting. I mentioned a little earlier, Rob Brindamore's in an interesting situation where, they haven't signed an extension, and, he's now down 2-0 in this series. They're starting a different goalie tonight. Like, Brindamore could be done by the end of the weekend, and he could be looking for a new job. So, Tree Living said, they want to do their due diligence, but they also don't want to wait too long. Berube's been a popular name, I know, in New Jersey as well. So I think it's a matter of, if that's the guy they want, getting the deal done in a timely manner and not letting another team swoop in. So that's kind of where we're at. I know you mentioned you might want to have Keefe in the near future here as one of the candidates of your next head coach.
I'm a big fan of Keefe. I think that he is in a situation where I think he got let down by some of his top players. I mean, and just think, if one bounce goes differently on Saturday night, we're having an entirely different conversation. I mean, the way that he willed that team back into it. Now, listen, their performances in a couple of the earlier games in the series are concerning. But I mean, the guys won a ton of hockey games. And here's the thing. And, maybe some people will say the same thing with Woodcroft, although I think it relates more to Keefe because of his tenure and how long he did it for. You learn a lot making mistakes the first time around. And I really do think that when inevitably Sheldon Keefe gets another NHL opportunity, a lot of the things that didn't go right for the Toronto Maple Leafs on his watch are going to sort of shape him for what he does moving forward. And I think that'll make him a better coach and more effective right now. So I certainly hope the Jets, give, if he's interested, have a conversation with them and gauge a little bit more about him, because I do like the fact of where he is age-wise. I think he deals with the media very well. I think he's honest with his players. And I think there was a lot of things that he did that was really, really top shelf. And, unfortunately, when, a team's paying $11 million to a guy and he doesn't really show up for a series, sometimes it becomes tough to win. Like if I'm Keefe and I'm looking at a team like the Winnipeg Jets, you've got an unbelievable captain in Adam Lowry. You've got some talented pieces around it. You got a world-class goaltender. I mean, there are some pieces to build with, as well as some really good young players that are seemingly close to ready to take that next step. So he's a really intriguing candidate for me. But back to Brind'Amour for a minute. Listen, Tom Dundon, the owner of the Hurricanes, operates in strange ways. He's always grinding guys. He doesn't want to pay market value. He's honest about it. He doesn't give a lot of the same security to his employees that other places in the league have. But Rod stuck around. And, Brind'Amour deserves a lot, and there's a ton of interest in Rod. I mean, if they actually let it get to the point where he was a free agent and could talk to other guys, they might find himself just walking away, which is hard to imagine with what he means to that franchise. But, well, listen, if I'm the Leafs and Rod the Bod's available, he would jump everybody to the top of that list. But I think you noticed we haven't heard a peep about the Seattle job right now. And again, I know this is somewhat conjecture, but you think about the history Rod the Bod has with Ron Francis and the money that they have with that new team, the excitement around the Kraken, made the playoffs, then missed this past season. I wouldn't be surprised if there was a Brinks truck full of cash in the Pacific Northwest. Mind you, the Leafs aren't going to get outbid for anyone. If they want their guy, they will get him. But if I'm Brind'Amour, would I rather be coaching in the belly of the beast in Toronto with all that attention, or would I rather be out in Seattle? Certainly, I think you can make an argument that the talent you have in Toronto probably makes that a more attractive job, but it's just everything else that comes with it. But this is more so than any time in the past, many years, Jake. This is a coaching carousel that is interesting. And you know what? I mean, just bring it back to Coolbet, as you mentioned, probably a pretty good opportunity when the dust settles for some betting options on next coaches of teams like the Winnipeg Jets and the Toronto Maple Leafs.
Yeah. No, listen, I mean, obviously busy time with playoffs, but definitely something we can look into in terms of, at least the Canadian teams. I know Ottawa got their guy yesterday, I believe. So, yeah, it's going to be an interesting path here. I think it's unfortunate for Keefe because I think people were kind of ready to see him go. Even last year, I think people were ready to see him go. But that's kind of the reactionary thing when you do lose in these fashions. And, eventually someone falls on the sword. I think a lot of people want Shanny out the door as well. That's another name where it's like, okay, this guy's been here for 10 years and it's been the same story over and over and over again. Do you expect him to survive? I don't know, Huss. Part of me thinks tomorrow might be like mutual parting of ways. I wouldn't be shocked if that was the case tomorrow. If it's like, I'm going to step down as president, the president job's going to be vacant. Because I think with the new CEO, apparently he's good to not have a president job. Have the GM. The GM will kind of oversee everything. Tree Living will bring in a new coach and, some new players, and we'll see what that looks like next season. But I don't know. I wouldn't be sure. Like, he's been there so long. I wouldn't be shocked if they just keep him around until the end of that Marner Tavares, those two deals there. If nothing happens next season, then that's probably it for him, and they'll move on.
Year 10.
Well, that's what I mean, right? He's been there like plenty of years, and it's not like they've seen any different success outside of the one series win. So, I don't know. I'm ready to see him move on. Not even sure like how much like what he does. Like, I think he has a lot of final say on things, which can cause a bit of that was the issue with Dubas, right? Dubas wanted more autonomy. They were like, well, no, like Shanny's here. And that's why Dubas moved on to the president job of the Pens and then gave himself the GM job as well. So, it's an interesting situation to say the least. But I wouldn't be surprised if they got a new head coach by the end of the weekend. I know. Listen, the Brind'Amour thing is obviously, like you said, Carolina would be silly not to bring him back. So I don't know if I'm willing to wait that long, especially if New Jersey's kind of already on the hunt for Berube. Like if that's the guy the Leafs want, I'm fine for them to go out and get him. It's also not up to me. I know I'm talking like I'm part of the team, but it doesn't really. It's just like it's going to affect my mood at some point. Listen, I made a video when they fired Babcock, and I was all happy, and I said we're winning the cup all the way back in 2019. And guess what? We're here again today. It's 2024. I didn't say we're winning the cup in my recent video because it just gets more unrealistic every year. So hopefully whoever they bring in can create a new spark. And it's really, to me, us at this point, it's not about regular season success. Keith had a ton of it, like ton of regular season success. Yeah. But when it comes to the playoffs, like, can you get this team to buy in to whatever it ends up being? And obviously it wasn't just what Keith was doing. The power play was awful. Guy Boucher needs to be out the door. The power play was 1 for 21 in the Boston series. That cannot happen. That is not a recipe for success.
That lost in the series, I think. I mean,
100%. 100%.
If you suck at special teams, and we saw that in the first round, all 8 teams that won the special teams battle won it. And just on the way out, I mean, if we're talking about playoff success, and again, this is total recency bias and just looking, but we've talked about the job that Rick Tocchet's done with the Vancouver Canucks. He'll likely win the Jack Adams, I would imagine. You've got, like, think about the coach. I mean, Knobloch's a bit of a unique situation because he came in mid-run, first-time coach, with a history with McDavid. But, like, let's look at Peter Laviolette, experienced, hard-ass coach. Montgomery on his second run after starting with the Dallas Stars. Rod the Bod, Paul Maurice. I mean, there's a lot of experienced hard coaches, and Berube certainly fits into that mode. And I think when you look at the Leafs, at least, it does seem like that might be a good fit for that club. Jake, great stuff as always. Hey, shout out to everybody in the chat. I know you probably had some new folks popping in, maybe busting a few of you guys. Oiler fans, just chill. You still got McDavid. You're down 1-0. Not the worst. Matthew Moreau got to hop into a meeting. Good show, Jake and Huss. Good luck tonight. See you guys tomorrow. And here's a little ditty from Rod Z on our way out. Yankees have covered the run line in 9 straight versus Houston. It's going Yanks -1.5 with over 1.5 first period in the Avs. Nicely done. I think I'm leaning on Avs too tonight, Rod, to be perfectly honest with you. I'll have a daily pick coming up on the Coolbet socials a little later on. I'll be back tomorrow. Pat Gregoire jumping in for Dusty, who will be off at the WHL final. Jake, thanks for doing this, buddy. Always a pleasure.
Yeah, thanks for having me.